We're going to go down to Sarasota, Florida right now. Roch Kubatko with us online. And Roch, let's talk a little bit about Chris Tillman. Not only an update, but what are they saying around the ball club about this situation?
Well, Mel read the blog, so I have nothing else to say. Actually, I do know they have discussed taking Chris out back and shooting him. That's it's called the old yeller. They call it the old yeller. But no, I mean, the reason there was confusion, as Buck mentioned to us yesterday, and I noticed when they set out the lineups for the inter-squad game that Chris wasn't pitching and he was supposed to start. So afterward, in his meeting with the media, Buck, he's sitting behind a desk, behind a table. And when we asked him what was going on, he says it's kind of like a core muscle injury. And then he kind of lowered his hand to point about where it was. Now, we're looking under the table to see where Buck's pointing. And he was kind of in the hip area. But, the hip groin area, it's a thin line, fellas. So it's kind of hard to tell exactly what. But we talked to Chris today, and he said it's kind of like a hip flexor. He noticed it Thursday. He said it felt a lot better Friday, and he got overconfident, as he said. He jumped out of bed Saturday and felt it a little bit. So that's why he didn't pitch in the inter-squad game. But he had an MRI, which we weren't aware of. He had it yesterday. And apparently it didn't show any sports hernia or anything like that. And he said he felt a lot better, and that if he had felt this way or the way he felt Friday, he could have pitched in that inter-squad game. But they're not taking any chances with him, and they're not worrying about him falling behind because he's been there working out pretty much all year. I mean, he lives in Sarasota. So he's ahead of the pitchers anyway. So he was tentatively scheduled to pitch in one of the inter-squad or the split squad games on Saturday, but it looks like Buck said that's probably not going to happen because they just don't see the point in rushing it, and they'll give him maybe a few more days. So it's kind of like, hey, the good news, the MRI didn't show anything serious, and he feels a lot better. But as Dave pointed out, the bad news is there is discomfort in that area, and you don't want it to linger. You hope it's not something that all of a sudden it becomes more serious as we get further along in camp.
Roch, how does this happen? What happened? When did he feel it? How did he know it happened?
He just felt it on Thursday, but I don't think there was anything in particular where suddenly he was throwing or anything else. He just noticed it. But it is unusual that the only time he really feels it is when he's walking. He said, I can jog, I can throw. It's the little things where he's feeling it. With the walking, some figure, well, just, jog off the mound and jog to the mound and just literally the walking part. But, again, because we're early in camp, we haven't even started exhibition games yet. That starts tomorrow. They just don't see any point in pushing it because there's no reason to. If he's feeling it at all, then take your time with him. They're going to give him ample time because, again, they feel like, he's not going to fall behind the pitchers and all of a sudden be in jeopardy of not making an opening day start. He may as well be careful with it.
Roch, isn't this one of those things where it's a kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't situation to where, they've been working out, a lot of guys have been working out with Brady. Tillman had been one of them in the past, in California. Miguel Gonzalez, another one. Yet, these are the guys that are working out so hard, seem to be coming to camp in the best shape of their lives. And then Gonzalez, who's on pace, everybody was talking about, especially Buck, he's going to get 200 innings. He wants 200 innings this year. He ends up with a groin injury. And now Chris with this situation. And it's been a couple different things with a couple different guys. Is there any talk or at all about, hey, are we doing too much in the lower body and the core? Are we making these things more tight than we are strengthening them? Or is it just something that, it just happens and just kind of keep doing what we're doing?
Yeah, I think it's just something that happens. I don't think they're relating it at all to workouts, especially because, at this point, Chris has just been throwing in camp. When it propped up, it wasn't like it happened during workouts. But at first, when we thought that it might be more, abdomen, then there were kind of jokes about Chris because remember he showed up in camp with a much flatter stomach and someone joked about, hey, he's got abs this year. It's like, see what happens is Buck says you can't pull fat. And Wayne Kirby always says, you don't want to get two-toned. David Lowe was hurt all the time. The guy had 0% body fat. That was kind of the joke. But I don't think there's anything really related here. It's just one of those things that happen. Chris has been working out basically the same routine with Brady for years now. This is the first time he said that he's ever had any sort of a hip issue.
Roch, Yovani Gallardo just turned 30, the last day or so. And I met him when I was down there with you guys over the weekend, and he seemed like he was a very nice person. A really terrific guy. What about his throwing schedule right now? How are they trying to bring him along?
I totally forgot to get him a card. I wish you would have reminded me of that a couple days ago. He's supposed to throw tomorrow. It'll be his second bullpen session. He had the one Saturday. He said it went great. And he's thrown again tomorrow. And after that, you can see he's eager to get into a game. But we asked Buck, is there any chance at all that he might pitch in one of those split squad games Saturday? And Buck said no. So again, because he signed so late and he hasn't been pitching, they're going to be extra cautious with him as well. So I would think if it's not Saturday, then it's got to be the following week. But at this point, it just they gave him the extra day of rest by having him throw Saturday and then again tomorrow, and then I'm sure he'll have another bullpen session or whatever, or 2 or 3 or whatever before they finally let him get into a game. But they don't want him because he signed late, even though he was throwing all this time. He wasn't sitting on the couch eating cookie dough. But they still don't want to go ahead and force him into a game. They're just being very careful in the early stages of camp here.
Roch, what about Trey Mancini and Christian Walker possibly going to the outfield? What's going on there? And by the way, I love your blog.
Oh, thank you.
It makes me laugh, makes me cry.
You never comment on it, though. But anyway.
We don't want it to go to your head, Roch.
Buck basically shot down the idea that Mancini would end up in the outfield. He doesn't think he has the arm for it. I think they wanted to focus more on first. But he did raise the possibility of Walker, and this is only in response to a question. He didn't bring it up himself. But he said that it won't happen in camp. But he says there could be a possibility of Walker maybe playing some outfield at Norfolk, even though it would be tough because they have a lot of outfielders right now. They'll be penciled into AAA. But he said that, it'd be something that they think he might be able to do. He told me that he played some left field in college, and he'd be comfortable enough doing it. His coach at the time figured, hey, you may as well kind of get that under your belt because you may need it one day. But, let's face it, you got Chris Davis signed for 7 years, and Mancini was the organization's minor league player of the year this past year. Walker was the year before. So it would make sense to see if maybe one of them would be comfortable enough to play another position as well. And they think Walker would be that guy, but there are no immediate plans to do that. And Buck also keeps reminding us, look, let's not forget about this guy. Everybody was talking about Mancini last year. Everybody's focused now on Davis and that 7-year contract. He goes, Walker had a really strong second half. There wasn't much talk about in the first half, but a really strong second that kind of elevated him back into discussion for another organizational Player of the Year award. And he loves the way he hits. He's a hard worker. So Buck wants to make sure that we're not completely forgetting about Christian. And certainly other teams noticed him. His name came up in trade talks in the winter meetings, and Buck's his teams are still asking about him. And there's been speculation, hey, if the Orioles are trying to get Jay Bruce from the Reds, maybe Walker would be a guy that would be included in the deal. So certainly other teams recognize that he's a pretty good young player.
Well, Roch, it's been a couple days since I've mentioned the two names, so I'm going to go ahead and do it again. Hunter Harvey and Dylan Bundy have thrown really well so far. They look healthy, and they're throwing strikes. They're getting people out, even if it's only batting practice against their own players and all. But impressive so far?
They have been in that they're both healthy so far, knock on wood. I think that's the number one thing. They just want to get them both through a season healthy and get them through camp. That's the first step. Then you do that, then you get them through a season. So it's one of those so far so good things. Bundy's looked really good throwing, his bullpen sessions, and Harvey followed him to the mound, I guess it was yesterday, and also looked really good. You can see Buck's try not to say too much about it, but he's encouraged. And with Bundy, it's really important because, again, he's out of options. He's got to be in the bullpen, and you don't want him to be like the Rule 5 guy that you're afraid to use, and he's taking up a spot and he can't be optioned. And Harvey's a guy that, they like to start out in Frederick, which I think was the plan before he was hurt, again, this past season. The guy hasn't pitched in over a year. So, they would like to start him out at Frederick, and they think he'll move quickly if healthy. So it's just, again, it's so far so good where both these guys are feeling good. There are no restrictions. Bundy, the biggest thing they're questioning now at this point is will they be able to build up his innings to where he can compete for a spot in the rotation next spring? Because he certainly can't do it this year. But can they get him stretched out enough where he's an option to be a starter in 2017?
Roch, one final question. Does it appear that Buck Showalter is being overly complimentary about Mark Trumbo?
I know he definitely likes the guy. He's been raving again about batting practice today, how many baseballs they're losing because this guy just got ridiculous power. But he also wanted to kind of downplay, Trumbo misplayed a ball in right field in the second inter-squad game. And Buck, we said, do you say anything to him? And Buck's like, I'm not going to rush up to him and ask him what happened. I'm sure Wayne Kirby will say something. But he knows that all eyes are on Trumbo, and the reputation defensively is that it could be a weakness. And, he kind of had a little trouble tracking a fly ball and it hit off his glove. And not to make excuses for the guy going about to do it, but how difficult it is, a fly ball, spring training games, that high sky, you always hear about it. It's the first game that he was out there, and he had a little trouble with it. I've seen, the best outfielders misjudge fly balls in the Grapefruit League with that high sky. But, all eyes are on him. He's going to get a lot of opportunities out there. But I think overall Buck really likes him. But, yeah, when he made that mistake, I'm sure he thought, okay, here we go. Here come all the questions about Mark Trumbo's defense now.
Well, Roch, all eyes will be on your blog as you continue your coverage of the Orioles from spring training, updating the Orioles. And don't forget, an early morning blog by Roch, usually around 5:30. You can get the update as you get up out of bed. Just check out MASNsports.com and Roch Kubatko. Roch, we appreciate it.
That was a nice segue. Thank you very much.
You gave it to me twice to pick up one.